not only did he have several tours of duty overseas where he was very active in war, but growing up, it sounds like his dad was a real monster. In fact, he believes that his dad killed his mom. This guy had a drinking problem for a reason. Anyway, long story short, this all came out in the group coaching environment, and he got healing as a result.
Welcome to the Iron Deep podcast. My name is Michael Stansbury. We've got a great guest with us today. His name is Steve Cavanaugh. Steve Cavanaugh lives in the great state of Florida today, and we will be talking about his entrepreneurial journey, his life that he lives now, the life that he lived beforehand. And what we like to do here on Iron Deep is really get down into the spiritual realm and talk about master mission and how entrepreneurs, business owners, and people that work for a living and they have a family, but maybe they have something else, a purpose, something else that drives them to do what they do, go out there and whatever journey they're on, whatever work that they do, whatever thing that matters most to them. How do you engage in that to make your life more meaningful? So, Steve Cavanaugh, welcome to the Iron Deep podcast, brother.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm happy to speak with the audience today.
Yeah. So, Steve, for those that don't know you, quickly, let's just go over what you're kind of, if you were to write an autobiography, but you're doing it in less than 3 to 5 minutes, I may ask some follow-up questions. Kind of tell a little bit of folks about where you came from, what you've been doing, what your kind of work you've been doing, your family. Just go. What does that look like for you?
All right. So I'm born and raised in Southern Maryland, Western Shore of the Chesapeake Bay, in a little town called La Plata that no one's ever heard of, but it's about 35 minutes south of Washington, D.C. And I grew up there and had a really good upbringing, actually. Really enjoyed it. It was kind of I grew up on a small farm. It was kind of a, rural slowly becoming suburban. Today, it's very much suburban and a bedroom community for Washington, D.C. But in any event, that's where I'm from. And so fast forward, I'll cut out a whole lot of stuff and get you to the beginning of my career, which is probably what your listeners are more interested in. Was I graduated college in 1999. And so I immediately took a job in the IT field, which had absolutely nothing to do with any degrees that I earned in college, which is fine. And the silver lining in my work experience and my job 9 to 5, which was really more like 9 to 6 or 7 experience, was, hey man, I didn't like to commute an hour into work and then an hour on the way home. I didn't like to have a supervisor telling me what to do. And so, I think I've always kind of had this rebellious streak about me, and that certainly was at play when I was in that job. So 4 long years, Mike, I had to do something else. And so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The Cash Flow Quadrant actually was the first book that I read, which was the sequel to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for those of you taking notes at home. And I said, man, I could do this. This is awesome. This sounds great. So I went out, long story short, I bought a rental property. And on the day that I closed on that first rental property, I had to have the job in order to qualify for the mortgage to buy the rental property, right? On that day that I closed on it, it was actually a day off. It was a Friday that I had taken off, and I drove down. It was like out of a novel, Mike. It was like a rainy day, and it was like the afternoon, and it was like dark outside and everything. And so I left settlement with my, title binder and folder in my hand. I was super excited. I just bought this property. I drove an hour to my job so that I could hand my 2 weeks notice to my boss in person on that Friday, because I had used the job for all it was good for, including qualifying for the mortgage. One last thing that happened there at the job. So anyway, I didn't actually make it the full 2 weeks. I had a trip planned with my buddy to go up to some concerts in New York. So I think I made it a week and a half, and I said, see you later. So I took some vacation days those last couple of days. So anyway, that's what I did, man. And then I had a mentor. I had a mentor who was a woman that had an office near where I was working in those days. And a mutual friend of ours said, hey, I could introduce you to this woman. She really kind of knows what's going on in this county that we were at. So she introduced me to, the tax rolls. She sat us down, and I don't know if you remember doing this, but there was like books of the tax rolls. and they were like really big, and you had to have like a big conference table to lay them out on. And then she had this little magnifying glass that you would read the lines. So that's how we marketed to this neighborhood that she turned me and a couple friends onto. She said, hey guys, the builders are building. And keep in mind, like, this is when things are starting to ramp up before that 2005 kind of time. And so she said, hey guys, write down all this information, all these people's addresses, and mail to them, because people are going to be building in this. Builders are hungry for lots in this particular neighborhood. So sure enough, I went home and I did a very small marketing campaign to that neighborhood. And very long story short, I had a gentleman call me and he had 2 of these lots for sale. We were able to put them under contract, and then we ended up flipping them to a local builder, and that deal made over $100,000. And that was a $100,000 wholesale deal, 2 lots right off the bat. And I said, okay, well, this works. This is good. So I took that money and then I put it into some marketing. I actually had a tiny little classified ad in the back of the Penny Saver. And so I had calls coming out the Penny Saver, and one of them was a townhouse that a woman was looking to sell. So we bought that property, and I made around $63,000 on that first rehab deal. So I kind of took it as a sign from God that this should be something that I should be involved in. So then, then that's kind of when everything started moving, from that point moving forward. So that was back in 2004 when I first got started. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah. And then now it looks like today. So you started out in Southern Maryland. You lived there for a while. You had your job, and now your entrepreneurial journey starts. How, because I know, but the audience may not know, now you live in Florida. How did you get there? What's business like? How do you operate your business, being a person that has a business that still operates in Maryland, but you live full time, and let's just be honest, in the great state of Florida?
That's right. Great state of Florida. We love it here. Love it here. I'm Southeast Florida, West Palm Beach area, and absolutely love it here. My wife and I have been coming down here since like the early 2000s. Her folks moved down here from Long Island, New York. There's a lot of New Yorkers and New Jersey folks in the area who are leaving those states in droves, especially these days, because they have high taxes. You know what I mean? So yeah, so we've been coming down here for a long time, fell in love with the area. It is absolutely exploding. There's no more room. If you're listening to this, you can't move down here. You can't take any more people. We got room for Mike, but that's it. Sorry. Yeah. So I have to give a lot of credit. I have to back up, and I have to give a lot of credit to Steve Cook and the folks at Life and Air, who has been a mentor, a coach, and a friend of mine for many, many years. Business, life, spiritual, all sorts of ways. Great confidant, and just a great guy. And he developed this Life and Air concept, which perhaps you've talked on other podcasts about, which is come up with a vision for your life, what you want your life to look like, without regard to money or business or anything like that. Once you figure out kind of what you want your days to look like and your life to look like and the time that you're spending on this earth to look like, then you can go ahead and backfill the business stuff in, once you've filled your calendar up with the stuff that you want to do. So anyway, one of the things that became apparent throughout the years of coming down here and loving it so much, and then having to go back to Maryland, was that we wanted to move down here. We wanted to move our family down here. We wanted to live 2 miles from the beach, which is where we live now. And we wanted year-round warm weather, which is, unfortunately, Mike, I have to say, what is it, 2023? It's something that we almost take for granted now. We don't even think about the fact that, oh man, it would be freezing in Maryland right now. Or it would be gray and rainy and drizzly and just nasty and
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, man, the lifestyle upgrade has been huge. I think as a result, we've been a much more active family. I think when it's cold outside, I mean, you just don't want to go outside, right?
No.
So,
and that's not to get off topic here, because I want to stay true to a couple things that we're going to talk about. But
okay.
One of the things about living in Memphis, and some of you guys, a lot of our folks, sometimes they live in the Midwest, is the thing that my wife and I noticed most is like December, January, February, if it's cold outside, if the weather's bad,
yeah,
we ain't going to get active. So I get it. And everybody I talk to that has moved to Florida, the only negative that I hear from people is that, hey, we just don't get the 4 seasons. But I mean, we get the best season, basically, is what they said. You mentioned something earlier in about changes and about mentorship, because you
Yep.
talked about the mentor that you had, and then you talked about Steve Cook, the mentor that you had help you get started in the business, and then you talked about Steve Cook. So with Steve and with other maybe mentors in your life, how have they helped you? Not necessarily with business and life, but what is the spiritual? How is having a mentor um, in the guidance of your spiritual life? What's that look like for you, Steve?
Well, let me put it to you like this. I had a pastor we loved our Pastor Mike Hilson from New Life Church in La Plata when we were in Maryland. And he was fantastic. And he gave this sermon one time, and he said he wanted to live his life in such a way that when people would look at him, then they would look up. And I think Steve's done a very good job of living his life like that. So there's people who are gifted with and believe in, pressing people and evangelizing, like trapping people in a corner and trying to kind of push their beliefs on them or whatever the case might be. Steve's the exact opposite of that. Steve's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and be a faithful guy and live my life. And whether you choose to kind of take this or not, like, I'm not going to force you to live my life this way. But, when you spend enough time with somebody like that, you can see the fruits in their life, And so then it's up to you, whether you want to live your life that way or not. You know what I mean? So yeah.
I agree with that. I think Steve's got that gifting, right? Of, there are people. I've also been mentored by Steve Cook, and one of the things I noticed is that over time, the folks that come to him and they don't want to talk about faith, and they don't want to talk about Jesus. They don't want to talk about those things. They just want, hey, I just need mentorship for my business. My life's a wreck. My business is a wreck. And Steve has with those particular folks, Steve has always had a way of meeting them where they're at. And then the walls come down and they're like, hey, tell me a little bit more about your faith. And I've seen that happen time and time again with that man. And so I think you nailed it. There are, and we don't want to discount, there are people that are gifted at going and preaching the gospel, and our world needs that too. But for Steve, he knows his audience. He knows who his audience is, and it's pretty interesting to see a lot of faith journeys be impacted by him. And what's great is I've seen other guys that have been mentored by him do the same thing. It's basically discipleship 101, and Steve Cook's been really blessed doing that.
Yeah.
So Steve Cavanaugh, you live in West Palm. One of the other things that you do besides real estate investments, you have some self-storage deals, but you also impact other people's lives as well with you have a group with Alex Pardo called Ascend. Talk about what I really want you to tell the audience is, how have you been impacted by the people in that group? Obviously they come to you for coaching and guidance, but let's reverse it a little bit. Talk about how some of those people have made those people have had effect on you and in your spiritual journey.
So yeah, I have let me back all the way up, Mike, and say I have coached people in real estate investment since, I want to say, around 2007, 2008 timeframe, starting then. And I ran a coaching group in Southern Maryland for 13, 14 years. And, we did a lot of deals, through that program. I think I coached 43 people over that time period, and we sold over $80 million worth of real estate projects that we were principals on. So not a small thing. And I really kind of cut my teeth with leadership and coaching through that endeavor. And it was very fulfilling. I had a number of students, by the way, leave their full-time jobs, and obviously, kind of as we were alluding to, when you're placed in a leadership position, then you have the ability to lead people in subtle but positive and good ways. So in any event, there's that, and yeah, what do I get out of it? I think is kind of your question is, right. Man, yeah. It's very fulfilling. When you have students who are able to, provide for their own retirement because they weren't going to have any anyway. I had one guy I work with as an example. older guy. Sorry, I almost said elderly, and he's not elderly, but an older guy who's retired, and not elderly, but he was a pilot. He was an airline pilot for, I want to say, American Airlines. And after September 11th happened, in order for the airlines to stay in business, they had to essentially renege on their pensions for their retired pilots. And so he lost his pension. Everything he worked so hard his entire career for was taken away from him, as a result of this, right? So to his credit, instead of being a victim and woe is me, he said, I'm going to learn a new skill, and that's real estate investing, and this is going to help me, pad my retirement or to rebuild my retirement. And so, to have a hand in something like that is a pretty gratifying thing. I had another woman who, was working, I want to say like 3 jobs or something crazy, and, she was able to do a handful of deals, buy some rental properties and create some financial freedom for herself. So that is extremely gratifying as well. But I want to take it a level deeper. And I want to tell you stories about the Master Mission trip, which I've got another one coming up early next year that I want an opportunity to talk about, if you don't mind. But this,
Sure.
I'm thinking about, we had one a couple of years ago. A guy came on this Master Mission trip, which, by the way, Master Mission is part mission trip, part mastermind, part adventure trip, and part foodie trip. We've been getting better and better about going to really good restaurants. And so this takes place in Antigua, Guatemala, and I lead a trip there once a year. And it's a small group. It's like 12 people. We try to get the right people together in a group, and we stay in the same Airbnb. We stay in a very nice gated community, very, very big house, but we most definitely visit the poorest areas of Antigua, Guatemala. And we support a school there called La Escuela Integrada. And so what happens is I take, these people down there that in many respects are high level entrepreneurs, investors, great, strong people in their own right. But then they come down there, they see the poverty, and we take them from a high, we might be hiking up a volcano, and then the same day we go and then we're in some 10 by 10 shack, where the folks, they're malnourished, and we're taking them food bags and we're praying, with them in their homes. So as you can imagine, Mike, this really serves to break people's barriers down, and we are able then to peel back the layers of the onion in the mastermind session, years of fear and false beliefs, and help people break down kind of all the facade, and to really get onto what really is the biggest life challenge for them. A lot of people think they have business challenges, but a lot of times business challenges are mental challenges or life challenges. And people are just going too fast in today's society to realize that. So something like this trip does a great job to help break that down. So I'm thinking of a gentleman who I won't mention his name, but he was on this trip with us a few years ago, and he hadn't spoken with his dad in years. He and his dad had a messed up relationship. His dad had gotten divorced from his mom, and his dad went and remarried. And after, probably about 45 minutes into his 60-minute turn, one of the other gentlemen at the retreat challenged him and said, "Why don't you call your father right now?" And because we're there to push each other, and nobody wants to be challenged, especially no man wants to be challenged and say, "No, I'm not going to do that." So he said, "Okay, that's a challenge. I'll accept that." So he got out his phone. After several failed attempts to actually get his dad on the phone, he put his dad on speakerphone in front of the group. And he said, "Hey, Dad, long story short, I'm in Guatemala with a group of friends, and I got telling them about our messed up relationship, and I just wanted to call you and tell you that I love you." And his dad said, "Son," he said, I don't even know how to say this, but I've been praying morning, noon, and night that you would call me someday." He said, "I'm so sorry I didn't reach out to you." He said, "I thought that you and your sister had completely written me off, and you had every reason to do it. And I've just been ashamed that I have just wanted to extract myself from your life." And he said, "I can't thank you enough for giving me a call. I love you." And he's crying, but everybody's crying. The dad's crying. It was a really beautiful, beautiful event. So he said, "Look, Dad, I'd love to get together and have a cup of coffee with you when I get back into the States." So he said, "Yeah, please give me a call when you get back." And it was a great, great moment. And then he hung up the phone, and of course we prayed over the guy and everything. But so he has a relationship with his dad today, and he's a young guy, so he's going to have children, and now they're going to get to know their grandfather. So the generations have been restored as a result of running this trip and leading people in this way and coaching people in this way. And I could go on and on. I mean, I could probably spend the next hour telling you stories about people that have been impacted in very similar ways through the master mission.
You know, what's interesting about talking about Antigua, Guatemala and how we're going so fast. One of the things I hear when you're telling the story is that the people that are coming down the master missions, they're almost forced to slow down. Antigua, for those that have been, for those of you who haven't been, in Antigua, Guatemala, I've been 6 times. For some reason, there's this thing called Antigua time that my wife and I talk about, where we slow down. It just forces you to slow down. And the other things that happen over there is you realize that at our American culture, our pace is crazy as far as how fast we go every day. I mean, I could tell you today, I've been going 90-0, you know, since I got up this morning. And Antigua slows you down. So when you get a bunch of entrepreneurs, business owners over there, and they're slowed down, and you take them through that process of showing them what real life is like for most people around the world, I can see how that would break down walls and break down barriers. Tell me another story about somebody that was, because I love these stories. I'm having a hard time, you know, keeping myself together when I hear that, you know, when a dad and a son reunite, it's the best feeling ever. We were talking about today in another meeting that I had, somebody asked the question, 8 of us, what's the last movie you cried at? It's like, there's no movie that I cried at, but I mean, I can't remember, but Field of Dreams is a movie where when the dad plays catch with his son, it gets me every time. It's the end of the movie.
Does it really? Yeah.
Sorry if I ruined it for you. But you know, that gets me every time. So Steve, tell me another story about somebody that was that came on your master mission trip. And I know some of these people know that they're going and know a little bit of details, but some of them, they're going for the first time. They don't know what to expect. Tell me, give me another story there.
I've got a great one for you. This is, if you want to hear about God's hand and how he has shown himself in my life recently, this is amazing. So I just ran a trip in February, and I live in a nice gated community here in Southeast Florida. And in the middle of our neighborhood, we have a clubhouse. It's got a tiki bar and the pool and everything. And what happens is the families will gather there every Friday night, and we usually have like a live band or a DJ or whatever. It's a lot of fun, you know. But there is an element. It's just like any other place you might go, where, you know, you got your people who are just there to hang out, and then of course you got your drunks, you know. And I tend to avoid the drunks. I don't have a problem with people drinking. In fact, I like to have a margarita every now and again there. But there's people who, you know, they spend $3,000 a month drinking this place, whatever. So one of these guys I knew, but it was kind of like one of these things where every time he would kind of come up, I would try to end the conversation with him as quickly as possible. Be nice to him, be kind to him, but try to find someone else to talk to or whatever, right? Well, recently, Mike, I've been playing a lot of pickleball. Have you played pickleball yet?
I have not played, but I've seen you on Instagram playing pickleball.
You're going to get addicted as soon as you play, so be careful. It's instantly addicting, but it's a lot of fun. I actually played all morning this morning, and I'm going to play tomorrow morning, and I play Monday nights, and I play a lot now. So anyway,
it's addictive.
I started playing a lot, and we have courts next to the tiki bar in our neighborhood. So I've been playing these Monday nights, and so the same guy from the bar would come play Monday nights. And so anyway, we, you know, and he's got a Hispanic background. And so I think I was in Antigua in the fall, and I got back and I was showing the guys one night just kind of the pictures of how beautiful it is in Antigua with the volcanoes and the sunset. And there's an active volcano there, Fuego, that shoots up, and you can see the lava and everything. It's really, really cool. It's not dangerous or anything. It's just really neat. And so I'm showing them all these pictures. And so he says to me, this is in the fall, he says, man, I might want to go on that trip with you. And immediately I'm thinking, man, there's no way I'd want to take this guy. He'd be drunk. He'd be, you know, everything, you know. And so the months go by, and I get closer and closer. Now it's January and I'm running the trip the next month in February. And he comes up to me again and he's like, Steve, do you have any more room on your trip? Now keep in mind, this guy's not an entrepreneur. He's not a business owner. He's a guy that works a couple jobs. And he's got a family and whatever, but I'm still thinking like, I was like, okay, let's talk about it. Maybe I'll have a spot. I'm still not sure. And I go home, I talk to my wife about it, and she's kind of like, oh yeah, I don't know. Like, you don't want your reputation in Guatemala to get ruined by taking the wrong guy and all that stuff, whatever. So a big event happens like the next week where a bunch of guys from my neighborhood and some other guys, they all get together and they got like blasted one night. And then they end up at the strip club. And then they end up going to the VIP in the strip club. Now, I've never been in a VIP in a strip club, but I can only imagine what takes place there. And so $5,000 later, and my friend who I'm talking about was there. Evidently, he passed out in the strip club, was asked to leave after they ran up $5,000 on his credit card, or he ran up $5,000 on his credit card. And but it was one of those rock bottom things that needed to happen. Wow. And so I think he got home at 3 or whatever in the morning. His wife had already been called by the credit card company saying, we believe there's fraudulent credit card charges because this is an irregular pattern of activity on your credit card. So comes home to the wife early in the morning, just passed out drunk. And it was one of those kind of like, this is it kind of moments. Like, is this, this isn't the life that I want to be living kind of thing. And so I find out about it the next week. And my buddy comes to me and is like, I think I hit rock bottom. And, so I had the opportunity to kind of have a conversation with him about it or whatever. And I said, you know what? I want you to go to Guatemala with me. I think it would be a really good opportunity for you to go to Guatemala. And at the same time, a men's group was starting up a church. And he said, I want to start taking my family to the same church that you guys go to. And so I said, well, you should also come to this men's group with me. But I said, you definitely should go to Guatemala with me. And I said, and I kind of pitched to him. I said, look, man, you speak Spanish. Like you could help our group. So I'm trying to give him some empowerment in that moment, to give him, a compelling reason why, like, he could be helpful to us. This is a guy who probably for many years of his life has not felt like he's helpful to anybody, right? And so he goes home, he talks to his wife about it, and his wife says, yes, you should go with Steve to Guatemala. So he comes along with us. And again, he's not an entrepreneur, he's not a business guy, but he comes along with us. And so we are there, and man, I was afraid the first day that he was just going to drink anything in sight. And we actually did an event. The very first thing, we had a historian come and give us some local history of Guatemala, but he also provided us with a bottle of Ranzacapa rum. And so that's making the rounds a little bit. And I'm just like, oh man, I really hope that this guy doesn't just suck down the, anyway, he didn't drink a drop. In fact, he had committed to his wife that he wouldn't drink for the first future. And so during his turn, everyone gets 60 minutes to talk their talk, to say their thing, to use the group coaching environment throughout the course of the week. And during his turn, it was revealed that, well, not only did he have several tours of duty overseas where he was very active in war duties, read into that what you will, but growing up, it sounds like his dad was a real monster. In fact, he believes that his dad killed his mom. Believes that his dad killed his mom. So that came out. Wow. His dad was such a monster that when he killed his mom and the mom had a funeral, he would not allow my friend and then my friend's brother to attend the funeral. So he never had any closure over his mother's death whatsoever. So you can see, I'm not making excuses for bad habits, but this guy had a drinking problem for a reason. There was a lot of pain to medicate there. You know what I mean? So anyway, long story short, this all came out in the group coaching environment, and he got healing as a result. Of course, we all stood around him and prayed at the end of his 60 minutes. And he's done very well in the men's group, and that he and I continue to be a part of. And I've become really good friends with this guy. But, it's not what the Lord was doing in his life. It's also what the Lord is doing in my life. And allowing me to be a part of it. and everybody else in the group, and as you're sitting there looking at these mystical volcanoes, as these conversations are happening and this healing is happening, it's such an overwhelming spiritual feeling that I haven't really had anywhere else. It's not to say I haven't had spiritual encounters, but these are very powerful. And I don't want to promise anybody that if they go with me on this trip that they're going to have a spiritual encounter, but I will say that I get filled up, on these trips when things like this happen with my buddy. So that's a good one.
Steve Cavanaugh, that's a great one. It's funny. The Lord has a way of just messing with our assumptions, and he does a great job of it. And look what he did. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you sharing that story, because there's somebody out there that's listening that probably has some similar background, some similar story. And I'm glad that, I'm just, you're in the scripture, it talks about that all things work together for the good. And this guy's whole life, his valleys that he had, deep valleys, but he was able to see something in Antigua that God showed him and put him on the path. And it's just cool to see that you're, listening to the Lord and that you're a part of that. If somebody wanted to know more about Master Mission, Steve, or go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Before I get to that, I just want to piggyback on what you just said. His wife came up to me a week or two after we got back from the trip. And she said, Steve, she said something to the effect of, why would you even consider taking him on the trip with you? Like, what did you see? Like, why him? Why would he go? He's been talking about your trip nonstop. He's talking about all the different people and the personalities on the trip. Like, I know them now through his story, but why would you take him? And seriously, man, I'm going to tell you and your listeners exactly why I took him is because that week before, when I looked into his eyes, I could see the spirit in his eyes. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yes. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I told him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, bro. So here's the deal, man. I am running another master mission for sure in 2024, February 7th through the 12th. That's a Wednesday through a Monday. 7th through the 12th, 2024. It's mastermission.org, all one word, mastermission.org. If you guys want to go on there and check it out. It's I want to say this is not a money-making venture for me. In fact, I pay my own way just like everyone else. Room, board, and again, we eat very good meals. We have a staff at the house that makes our beds for us, cooks us breakfast, and then we go out to some of the finest. Antigua was a great tourist spot too, by the way. Don't think that we're just live on, some people, they want to go sleep on dirt floors. That's not what we do. If that's what the trip is, not this trip. We live in a very luxury accommodations where we are, but we experience extreme poverty while we're there. And it's part of the experience, and you should be okay with that. But mastermission.org, I think it's $2,000 right now is what it's set at. The only other cost you have to bear is your flight there. And by the way, we get together in the States, we meet in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we fly out on the same flight into into Guatemala City. So I will be with you the entire time. I'm not going to let you fend for yourself in Guatemala City. It's a leisurely hour and a half ride to leisurely. I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek to Antigua, but everything's taken care of is my point to you. Everything's taken care of. It's completely safe. In fact, Mike, I've been in many cities in America where I have felt much, much more in danger than I ever have in Guatemala, ever. So regardless of what you may have heard, it's really a safe trip. Awesome. Yeah, man. And hey, there is the possibility. I want to put this out there. I don't know that I'm doing this yet, but I'm eyeing the first week of December of 2023 to potentially do a small men's trip where we do adventure only. So we're going to go camp at the base of the active volcano where we get sprayed with some lava maybe overnight. And no, I'm just kidding. And we are looking at camping and doing an ATV tour and some hiking volcanoes and stuff like that. So there's that too.
Awesome. Steve Cavanaugh, thank you again for coming on the Iron Deep podcast. If you want to know more information about Master Mission, it's mastermission.org. You can find out about when those master missions are happening, a little bit more about the school there that Steve sponsors, and all the things. Steve, again, thanks for coming on. We'll see you guys later.